A Switch in Time. That was the first book I published. And I'll read you the synopsis. While portraying John Wilkes Booth in a play at Ford's Theater, actor Roger Ebert switches places in time with John Wilkes at the exact moment that Abraham Lincoln is shot. In the future, Booth is held captive by Roger's fiancée, Camille Mercé, who enlists the aid of physicist Ernesto Marquez in hopes of switching Roger and Booth back. In the past, Roger must convince those around him that he is Booth, so that history will run its course. As he plays his ultimate role in 1865, Roger hopes that Camille will find a way to bring him home.
And this is your reading assistant?
This is, well, I have two. I have Elvis, he's my dog, and you will probably hear Jack chirping away. But, you know, that makes it authentic for me because Jack's always chirping. He's a cockatiel. And his name is actually Jack Dawson. He was named after the character in the movie Titanic that starred Kate Winslet and one of my favorites, Leonardo DiCaprio, who I've often said needs to meet me. So here we go, Chapter 1. John Wilkes Booth glared at Abraham Lincoln. Lincoln was calling for national thanksgiving. He spoke of reconstructing the South. Booth's left eye twitched as he fought to keep from shouting, "Tyrant!" He looked about him. Thousands of people stood around him on the executive mansion's lawn. Lincoln spoke from an east wing window. "How can they listen to him and not shout him down?" Booth asked. Louis Payne, dark hair hidden beneath a top hat, turned to Booth. "At least they're not applauding him, John Wilkes." David Harrell, on Booth's right, grumbled, "They should stone him, is what they should do." Booth grinned at young Harold. Every now and then, the boy had a good thought. He turned back to Lincoln. The president was talking about the voting situation in Louisiana, and to Booth's astonishment, he was advocating Negro suffrage. "That means nigger citizenship," Booth hissed. "By God, I'll put him through. That is the last speech he will ever make." Payne gave him a sidelong glance. "John Wilkes, keep your voice down." Ignoring the warning, Booth grabbed Payne's arm. "Do you have your pistol with you?" "Yes, but—" "Shoot him, Louis. Do it now." Both Payne and Harold stared at him. "What's the matter with the both of you?" Booth explained. People around them looked at him. He smiled and tipped his hat to the elderly couple in front of him. The excitement of the moment. He stood quiet then, hands in the pockets of his overcoat, fuming at Lincoln and at Payne and Harold. Didn't they understand? This had gone past kidnapping Lincoln. The president had to die. He whispered in Payne's ear, "This is the time, Louis. Shoot him." Without looking at him, Payne flatly refused. "There are too many people here, John Wilkes. We'd never get away with it. We'd only get ourselves in trouble." "Trouble," Booth mumbled. He gazed at Lincoln again, but he did not see Lincoln. He saw himself at age 14. The carnival had come to town. He and his sister Asia had gone. A gypsy read his palm in the confines of a weathered, gloomy tent. She was old, white hair curling out from beneath a dark, multicolored cloth. A smelly black wart sat on the end of her nose. "I have never seen a worse hand, boy," she said. "Never. There is only trouble ahead for you, and you will die young." Asia tugged on his arm and begged, "Let's go, Johnny. I don't like this." Now, years later, Booth was ready to cause trouble, and he would do so by killing Abraham Lincoln. "Come on, Peter," Roger shouted. "Payne wouldn't speak that way, and you know it." Peter stared at him, anger in his eyes. "This is how I've always said these lines." Roger glared at him. A small, thin man with wire-rimmed glasses cleared his throat. Ah, Roger, have you forgotten who the director is here? No, Rich, it's just that, he trailed off. Rich brushed his 2-day-old beard. Just what, Raj? Lincoln's giving a speech that speaks of everything John Wilkes Booth detests. It angers him. No, it infuriates him. He's pushing Payne to pull out a gun and kill Lincoln in front of a mob of people. That's how upset he is. Peter isn't responding to that. He has Payne sounding almost monotone, like this is no big deal. What? Peter exclaimed. Payne sounded pretty forceful with Booth to me. Rich held up his hands. Both of you. Fighting 4 days before opening night is not helpful here. So let's break for lunch and give ourselves a chance to cool off. We'll pick up this scene again later. I second the idea, Peter said, turning to go. Right behind you, mate, Chet Manfield, a.k.a. David Harold, said, following Peter. Rich laid a firm hand on Roger's shoulder. Come on. I'll catch up. Okay, coffee shop around the corner. Roger watched Rich go, then turned his attention to the theater box where Abraham Lincoln had received the fatal bullet. The box was decorated as it had been that night, bunting, American flag, and portrait of George Washington. Booth had given his ultimate performance in that box. Will I even come close to you, John Wilkes? He asked aloud. Come close to what? Roger turned. Camille stood beside him. I was just wondering if this season will be as good as last season was, that's all. Camille slipped her arms around him and laid her cheek on his chest. He was a good 3 inches taller than her. With you as Booth, it will top last season, she said. That is, if you don't alienate Peter. He pulled away from her. What's that mean? I saw your tantrum. It wasn't very becoming, sweetheart. Isn't this play important to you, Camille? Of course it is, Roger. This play has been really good to us. Playing Laura Keene has been very rewarding, especially showing that she helped tend to Lincoln's comfort the night he died. But she pushed her black hair back over her shoulder. I guess I just don't have your urgency about the whole thing. It's a play, and there will always be plays. So Roger's kind of making some enemies.
Right from the jump.
Yeah. So let's go along a little farther to the night that Booth makes his plans. The executive mansion was a blaze of yellow light in the center of celebration and illumination. John Wilkes Booth stood before the mansion, eyes hard, body rigid. Lincoln was inside the building, enjoying this victory he had wrought. May we help you, sir? A soldier asked, appearing beside him. He had loitered here too long. Booth turned to the Yankee, tipped his top hat, smiled his best stage smile, and said, I was just admiring the illumination. It is quite lovely, don't you think? The soldier grinned. Yes, sir. The whole city is lit up, that's for sure. Did you see the sign at the Capitol? Truer words were never written. This is the Lord's doing. It is marvelous in our eyes, it says. Yes, I saw it. The young man coughed. I'm afraid I'll have to ask you to move along. You have been here a while now. Booth bowed ceremoniously. You are most certainly correct. Have a good evening, Private. You too, sir. Booth headed down Pennsylvania Avenue, bypassing an army band playing Yankee Doodle. The avenue was alive, overflowing with more people than it had ever seen. Lincoln had called for a week of celebration, and the Capitol citizenry had not let him down. John Wilkes! Booth turned and found David Harold running towards him. Davy. Harold walked along beside him. Word is Lincoln won't appear tonight. Booth scowled. This night isn't over yet. He slipped his hand beneath his overcoat, touching the derringer in his suit coat pocket. Just keep watching for opportunities. They walked on in silence. Booth rerunning Lincoln's April 11th speech in his head. Two words kept ringing again and again in his brain. Negro suffrage. We should have killed him when we had the chance, he mumbled under his breath. Davy grabbed his arm. You make it sound like killing Abe will solve everything. Keep your voice down, you fool, Booth admonished. Where you going, Elvis? Well, see ya. Keep your voice down, you fool, Booth admonished. He pushed Harold forward. Keep walking, and killing Lincoln will solve everything. If Lincoln dies, the South will rise again. There are men who still want to fight. Without Lincoln, the North will disintegrate. He holds it together. He is its strength. I think you give him too much credit, John Wilkes. I don't recall asking what you thought, Davy. I forgot. The great John Wilkes doesn't need anybody's ideas. You know, maybe if you had listened to some of my ideas, we wouldn't have missed kidnapping Lincoln. I doubt your ideas would have made a difference. Booth picked up his pace. I do have a brain, John Wilkes, Harold said. Booth smiled. I never said you didn't, Davy. It just never produces a good idea. Harold stopped dead, furious, and Booth walked on, enjoying the younger man's anger. He was almost to 10th Street when Harold caught up with him. You know something? You can be downright nasty. Booth laughed and slapped Harold on the back. Of course I can, David, and I pride myself on it. Now let me buy you a drink.
Now, do you struggle with natural dialogue, or does it just come easily to you?
Dialogue comes easy to me, but I spend a lot of time listening to people talk.
Yeah, I know some writers will even, they'll ride on the subway and listen to conversations that people have.
Oh, yeah.
Every novelist got their own technique for
you have
for
to,
dialogue.
It's, you have to do that. You have to listen because people, conversation is different too in different parts of the country. It's different. It was different in 1865 than it is now. Payne and Catherine takes place in 1926 in parts, so it was different,
Yeah.
You just have to. So, the one scene, I'll read one more thing from here, and this is when the actual switch occurs, which actually occurs, like the synopsis said, at the moment that Lincoln is shot. So we'll pick this up here. Roger knew the minute he landed on the stage he'd broken his left leg. Damn it, he cursed. He looked up at Ted Walters for sympathy. Walters, looking more like Harry Hawk than he had ever in the play's history, stared back at him with fearful eyes. Roger fought to regain his feet. Brandishing his knife, he shouted, Sing Semper Tyrannis! Ted Walters turned and ran. Roger hobbled after him. Good, he coached himself. Keep going, ignore the pain. Follow Ted's example. The show must go on. Reaching the wing, he ran into 1998's Laura Keene. He pushed past her. Offstage at last, Roger hopped on one foot, searching for a place to sit down. He looked about for Rich. It's Wilkes Booth! Back here! Roger turned and gave Sarah a questioning look. She stared at him with angry eyes. Pandemonium broke out in the theater. Stop that man! It's Wilkes Booth for sure! He shot the president! Two men ran backstage and Sarah pointed at Roger. There he is! Stop him! Both men came at him and Roger instinctively backed away. The stocky, dark-haired man grabbed his arm. You'll hang for this, he hissed. Roger stared at the man, astounded. Who the hell are you? The second man, his wire-rimmed spectacles perched on the end of his nose, grabbed Roger's other arm. We have him, he shouted. We have the man who pulled the trigger. Frightened, Roger struggled to free himself. I don't know what you're talking about. I didn't really shoot anybody. The stocky man raised his fist, swung, and Roger ducked. Backing away, he tugged his arm free. He swung at his attacker. He missed the stocky man, but hit the man with the spectacles. The glasses fell from the man's nose, and he gasped, letting go of Roger's arm. He fell to his knees and frantically searched the floor for his glasses. The stocky man came at Roger again, but Roger stood his ground, swung low, and his fist slammed into the man's stomach. He doubled over, cursing. Roger ran for the stage door. A man blocked his path. Roger raised his knife. "Move! Get out of the way! Don't make me hurt you!" The man gaped at him and just stood there. Roger slashed at him, the knife's blade grazing his neck. Crying out, the man grabbed his neck and stumbled away. Reaching the exit, Roger used his shoulder to push open the door. He jumped outside on one foot. A man stood holding the reins of an already saddled horse. "Give me that horse," Roger demanded. "What's the matter, Mr. Booth?" the man asked, still holding on tight to the mare's reins. Roger snatched the reins from him and pushed him backwards. "I am not Booth!" Grimacing, he stood on his injured left leg and put his right leg in the stirrup. He raised himself up to mount, and the horse circled round. Somehow Roger managed to get his left leg over her back. He kicked her and yelled, "Go!" The animal tore down the alley. Men were screaming behind him. They called Booth's name. They wanted him to stop. Roger rode on, terrified. So he's still not in 1998. He's got a little problem. But that's a little taste of a switch in time.
It's a very potent moment in history to pick.
Yeah. And I guess what really got me to pick it was I was in an antique store in Frederick, Maryland, and I stumbled upon a book about the assassination and read it